Hello, SE Nation. Today we're talking about fixing up your resume to maximize your chances of getting an interview. So, meet me at the computer. Before we start, I want to preface that the best way to get a job is through connections, through referrals. If that doesn't exist, if you don't have any connections to a certain company that you want to um, get into, well, having a strong resume would definitely help. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I've used this resume, and this is not the only way to do a resume, but what I've used here has helped me get a bunch of interviews, which may or may not have led anywhere, but that's not the point. The point of the resume is to get you to the interview, and then from the interview, it's up to you to actually prove yourself. What I like to do is, in my resume, I like to break up the resume into four portions. I like to have the objective, which is usually there to say that, hey, I want to join your company, I want to use the skills that I've learned, and I want to build a fruitful career at your company. And for some reason, I know that companies or millennials right now do not care to stay in one company for a long time. But if a company is hiring, it costs them money if people keep switching over and over, because it takes a long time, especially for a sales engineer, to get up to speed on all the different products and the value props of all the different things that they're going to be selling. So it is nice to know from the company's perspective that when they're hiring somebody, they would want to stay for a prolonged period of time. Now, what is that time frame? That's up to you. Generally speaking, the number that I hear out there is 2 years. Otherwise, you're job hopping. And I haven't stayed in a company less than 4 years. So, and I find that reasonable. And I would stay longer with a company if the opportunities are there. If not, then I'd move on. I don't just switch jobs for the sake of switching jobs. But I like to keep my resume updated. So this is the first section. Basically, I want to utilize my acquired skills to help your company, whatever the company name is, as an organization, the users of the product, and continue to build a fruitful career. You can put whatever sentence you want there as long as you show that you want to work for the company. Some people just omit that altogether. I like to keep it, and so I keep it. The second section is the work experience. This is where I'm going to list all the different job experiences that I've had. Note that this is more for experienced personnel. If you're straight out of university, then you might choose a different format for your resume. But because this is sales engineering, I'm talking about the people that get the job the most, which are experienced people. So this is the second part, work experience. And then if I scroll down, I have certification and education. I consider that one part. If you have a certification that is not known, but there is an equivalent to it that is known, you can always say it is equivalent to whatever. This is what I have here: Alcatel-Lucent Service Routing Architect, which is the CCIE equivalent. May or may not be true, but it's the highest level of certification at Alcatel-Lucent, and they teach somewhat similar things. And then my education, I like to have it in a box, which allows me to have more space. Otherwise, by the way, I like to keep my resume to 2 pages only, because I don't want to make the person, whoever's reading my resume, to have to read like a thesis. So I keep it to 2 pages only, which is why I'm very high on keeping the space tight. And then the last section is the skills section, which in my case I've divided to technical skills, sales engineering skills, and leadership skills. I've seen resumes where they have a box on the far right or far left, like that actually states like all the different things that they do. I find that distracting personally. I wouldn't want to read a resume that's like that, because I didn't know. For a lot of times I didn't know where to look. Am I looking at the main paragraph, or am I looking on the side? Because when you're reading, develop new, whatever, and now you're seeing the box on the side, and I get distracted. That's just me personally. All right. Well, this has been fun. That's the end of the video. Probably not. All right. Here's what I like to do when I'm writing my skills. I don't want to list like what I do on a day-to-day basis. I want to list what I do to help the company on a day-to-day basis, what I've achieved for the company, and also what I can bring to the table. So I was looking for a sales engineering job, and this is something that everybody can do. If you're already a sales engineer or in sales in general, it's nice to have exact numbers of the achievements that you've done. So in my case, I've achieved Century Club, which means I've hit my quota in 2015 and 2017, and I put in the exact numbers. I actually achieved 130% of my quota, and in 2017, I achieved 107% of my quota. I put in the exact number. I didn't round it up, did not round down, because that having exact or rounded numbers doesn't show that you're accurate, even though you could be. But that's why you put in like an odd number is usually good. So you mentioned how many times you've hit your quota. Actually, I have a master resume, which is longer than 2 pages, but I modify it for every single job that I've done. I haven't applied to many jobs since I've moved on to my current company, but when I was with my old company, which is Spirant, I looked for jobs. I put out a lot of resumes with different companies. If you're not a sales engineer and you don't have these exact numbers, then you should think about the times that you've worked with internal customers. So if you're in IT, your internal customers are, if you're in IT for a bank, your internal customers are the users, like the bank employees who have computers or using the network. These are your customers and how you've worked with them and how you've helped them. Or if you work with a company that does have a sales team, how have you interacted with the sales team? How have you helped them sell? So, for example, I was in support. A lot of times I get calls from account managers and sales engineers saying, hey, we have this hot issue, we need help fixing it. And I help them fix it, as an example. And this is your chance to actually brag humbly. Like, people are off-putted or they don't want to brag. This is your opportunity to brag. This is all about you. If you're selling your equipment, you're bragging about your equipment, how great they are, how well they help the customer. This is what you're doing here. You're actually bragging about what you've done. I bragged about the fact that I broke into 3 new accounts. And I don't put I or we or whatever, but it is we, like me and my salesperson. We broke into 3 new accounts. We won back 4 accounts. Brag about the things that you've done. What else is there? If you have presented anything internally or externally, if you've trained anybody, if you've mentored anybody, make sure you put these in here. Mentored sales engineer. Like, I've even had worked with and influenced support and engineering teams. If you actually, this is basically selling. You're trying to sell that you've sold the support and engineering team to help you solve a customer problem in a timely fashion. And did you ever have to sell your boss or anything? Did you have to write memos, methods of procedures? What's important for sales engineers is communication skills. That's a big thing. Hitting quota, another big thing. Working with customers. So if you can think about the times that you've done any of these, you may not have hit quota because you've never been a sales engineer, but you have worked with other people. You've influenced other people. And could be customers, could be internals, could be a part of your team. You've worked with them. You most likely, I haven't heard of an engineer who hasn't done some form of training to his team, some presentation. Make sure you mention those here. If you've mentored anybody, mention that here. And that's what I've done. So before I moved to Spartan, I was not a sales engineer. I was a network design engineer and a support engineer. And what I've done here, although I didn't sell anything, I did consult with clients, which meant I worked with clients. I did provide documentation, training documentation, migration plans, which shows I have communication skills. And before that, like, I helped support engineers debug. This was a lot longer when I applied to Spirent, the first company I worked for. But because I like to keep it to 2 pages, I tend to remove stuff out of it as I have more, let's call it, skills that fit the company that I'm trying to move to, or fit the position that I'm trying to get. What else? Let's see. And the last section, I already talked about the certification education. The last section is I add the things that I wanted to mention, but I wasn't able to because it just didn't fit. So I talked about like my knowledge of like routing or services, virtualization. I talked about how I led discovery calls. These are not things that you could put in the resume specifically, but put in the job description, but you can put them here, and that way you didn't miss the opportunity to brag humbly. There's a lot more things that I want to say, but this is turning into a little bit of a longer video. So how about this? If this video is nice, and no, I cannot speak today. If this video is useful for you and helps you in any way, shape, or form, comment below and like it, subscribe, and all that. And I can do another video where I can take my resume, take a job description that's already out on LinkedIn, and try to match the two and show you how I would edit my resume to fit that job description. And that's it for me. I hope this has been useful. If not, let me know, because then I'm kind of defeating the purpose of doing these videos. And I will talk to you guys in a couple of weeks. Cheers.